Okay, so my name is James Alexander, and I'm a developer working at the Open University. I've been working here for about over 10 years. Prior to that, I worked for the British Library, and I have some previous experience working with TEI rather. I regularly attend the Thursday tech calls, and although I don't program in Java myself, and I wouldn't regard myself as a committer, I tend to see what other people are up to and to understand Fedora a bit better. Everyone's always very friendly, and I'd unreservedly recommend it as a way of finding out about Fedora. So today I'm going to give an overview of how we adapted the EVT, that's the Edition Visualization Technology Viewer, which I'll call the EVT Viewer, for use with our digital library. If there's time, I could perhaps give a demo of some of the features, but there are a lot of features and not that much time. So yeah, fun fact, I live in an old house near the centre of England's newest city, Milton Keynes, which I think has just made the city, was it early this year or last year? Anyway, so about the Open University. So really there are three main points about this. First, the Open University is big. Second, it produces a lot of learning materials that eventually end up at the university's archive. And thirdly, making materials accessible is absolutely a key part of what we do, and indeed of this development. So a little bit about the digital archive. So the digital archive was launched in 2014 and holds a growing amount of content. So the back end for this is still Fedora 3.x, and the front end and the administrative interface are custom built in PHP. So the crown jewels of the collection is the large audio video collection, but there are many other sorts of materials, hundreds of books and images and other material. The archive is in continuous development, and there is also a growing collection of over 3,000 archived course websites that we are in the process of making available to staff. But today, the collection is somewhat smaller. In fact, it's the smallest collection, and you can see it pictured there. It consists of just 2 books, into which were pasted just over 200 letters from eminent, mostly Victorians. It was collected by the publisher Sampson Low, and quite a lot of the letters are focused on publishing. However, there's a wide range of subjects, and the letters are from, amongst others, politicians, poets, writers, and social campaigns of the time. So if we go that a bit more. So the challenge with developing this collection was to make the collection available for scholarly and public access. And we knew we'd have to do the usual things, which for us is to digitize the letters, prepare the transcripts of the letters, and generate some context material around the collection as part of creating an online exhibition. However, there were 2 critical decisions, key decisions really, that shaped the development of the collection. So the key decision 1 was how to best describe the content, and obviously we use TEI to describe it. In brief, the letters are quite messy looking. The handwriting varies in legibility quite a lot, but there are also a number of other issues with the text that we wanted to be able to describe. There's damage to quite a lot of the letters, areas of loss, crossed and underlined, embossed frank text. There were some doodles and artwork. People have inserted writing and put it below the line. And indeed, there is some content which has been written in lines above and, on both twice on the page, which we'll see in a second. So this is a view of a pretty typical letter. As you can perhaps see that someone has written a note about the author at the top, right at the top of the page there in small handwriting. We don't actually know who that was. There are areas where the glue has seeped through, and the writing isn't terribly easy to read. There are also 1 or 2 crossings out. So that's a pretty typical letter. One of my favorite letters, though, is this one. For some reason, the author has written 1 page horizontally, then turned the page at 90 degrees and written another page. It's not easy to read, in short, and we wanted a way of being able to describe all of these things. And to say, we decided to use TEI markup to capture both the metadata and to describe the text of the letters. TEI has a sophisticated set of ways in which text can be described. It's particularly good at describing incomplete and illegible texts. So here's an example of how we might describe missing text. So this is a letter with some content missing towards the top of the page. You can see there's a couple of lines missing there. So if we zoom in on that bit of the page, you can see the area of missing text. you can see from the TEI that's given below, which is the markup for the text you see, that there's quite a lot of markup to describe each line of text. So, for example, we've got a line break or LB element and an AB element to contain the text of each line. There's also a damage thing where you can specify the agent, and yeah, adequate ways, in short, of being able to describe both the text and other elements on the page. Although I have to say that learning how to use it was quite a learning curve. So, second critical problem and critical decision was really about how best to display the content. We decided at a very early stage that we would need to find a way to display both the image of the letter and a view of the text as printed in parallel. So you can see here what our idea was, that we would have, really one Settlegate facing the other in a book-like view. So we wanted this parallel view, but our existing Internet Archive book reader doesn't offer this as an option. And we looked at several, well, I think probably all of the available TEI viewers, but most of the TEI viewers are concerned with views of the markup as XML or ways of looking at XML. And this really wasn't what we were looking for. However, once we discovered it, there was really only one candidate for the job, and that was the EVT Viewer. So the EVT Viewer presents by default a view, which is exactly what we're looking for, a parallel view of image and text. It is also well documented with a user manual of over 40 pages. The view has been in development since 2017, and the 1.x version is both stable and fully featured. In fact, it has a lot of controls, and when I say a lot, I mean more than 40 by default. And one or two of these are really only relevant for looking at manuscript scrolls, which could be confusing in this context. So we decided to use version 1.3 of the viewer, as the 2.x version is still in beta, and the 1.3 version is still receiving updates, which is just great. So the viewer was developed at the University of Padua, and the open source code is readily available at GitHub. And you can contact Roberto Rosselli del Turco for more information, and he will be very helpful, I'm sure. It would take about a day, perhaps, to demo all the features, so I'm not going to do that. But one of the features we'd really like about the viewer is that you can toggle the view of the text, as well as being able to see both the image and the photo and the text at the same time. So if you want to change from a critical to a diplomatic view of the text, you can. So a diplomatic view is really the view of the text as it is, and a critical, or also called an interpretive view, would include editorial additions such as helpful expansions of abbreviations, as well as indicating where the text is missing. And we found this to be a really useful feature, and we were delighted that it was available. So we find it necessary to customize the EVT Viewer as it comes off the shelf in a number of ways. So first of all, there are some obvious stylistic changes to rebadge the viewer as part of our overall site. And we toggled mostly off quite a few buttons and other elements that weren't relevant, and made some changes to simplify the overall look of it. We also needed to make quite a few changes for accessibility. So the original developers have gone to quite some effort to make the viewer accessible using custom keystrokes. But we redeveloped this so that every element can be tabbed to and controlled using a standard keyboard and without any knowledge of specific keystrokes, which was not how the original one was designed. So this is what our modified viewer window looks like. As I say, if there's time, I might demo some of the main elements later. But you can see that even with the cut down version, there are still quite a lot of controls, I think about 30 here. But the most important of these are the page turner left and right, and the ability to switch between interpretative and critical views of the text, which is this drop-down menu here, which shows the interpretive view at the moment. So we also had some additional work to do that isn't immediately evident from the interface. because we needed to create over 200 instances of this with distinct URLs, whereas the EVT Viewer is really designed to create just a single manuscript at a time. So we also did some pretty standard collection preparation work, as I say, preparing the images and transcripts. With the transcripts, we're really careful to ensure that end of line returns exactly line up with those in the original letters. So, and the reason for this was to enable us to automatically create TEI markup line by line. We also needed to adapt the viewer to enable us to hold our master copy of the TEI XML within Fedora and to simplify and automate the creation of page elements as far as possible. So this is the usual way that the EVT workflow would work to create a viewer. So you can see that you start off with TEI, you add the default XML, for which there are many controls for toggling on and off elements. And then the transformation to HTML would usually be performed for a single style sheet, for a single document, using the XML editor Oxygen. So this would kick off the transform that ships with the viewer and create a series of static pages, which are cobbled together into a single view. So we adapted the view in the following ways to work for us. So first of all, we started with a fairly simple HTML input form used to create a simple XML data stream in Fedora called letter. Essentially, this data stream is just, when it's created, is just the input form as a series of XML fields. So this is then transformed with our custom XSLT to create a fully marked up TEI data stream in Fedora. And then in turn, we take that in the same way that you would with an ordinary EVT viewer creation to create the static HTML page using effectively a version of the default XSLT that ships with the EVT viewer. And this creates, as I say, the static HTML page and associated template fragments. So this is just a view of, I'm not sure if you'd be able to see it, but this is just a view of the input form for the letter, for a letter. So there's 24 fields. Most important of these is the one at the bottom, which you can probably just about see the top of, which is the text of the letter. So this is then inserted into both the header and the body of the TEI document automatically. So here you can see an example of fully marked up TEI document that's generated by our custom style sheet out of the XML created by the input form you've just seen. So there's a lot of, I mean, you know, without going through it all, there's a lot of markup that's automatically generated, and this saved a huge amount of time in actually getting the TEI generated. So the transformation is into the viewer's HTML elements is then created automatically. We use Saxon's transform rather than Oxygen because we wanted the process to be automated. And then it's possible later to re-edit the TEI data stream to fine-tune it. So the outcome of the process should be something like this: a templated page with the various elements slotted into page. So the TEI header information is used, although you can't see it here, to generate many of the pop-out elements. So this would include things like the manuscript description, the lists, and yeah, some other things. So the takeaway for this really is simply that we were able to develop a robust and user-friendly interface for Fedora content, leveraging a robust and well thought out base. And the result was a mix of elements, some essential, some desirable, some for which, in the end, we didn't find the use for a variety of reasons. So some things we didn't use with the ability to link the image and the text. And the reason for this is that although it's a really cool feature we wanted to use, we didn't actually have the resource to create and draw the little boxes that we need to put around every line of text. And when we tried it, we actually found that most of our text wasn't terribly horizontal, so that that was quite problematic for our instance in any case. And secondly, we didn't use the search within the document because most of our letters were at most a few pages long. So the next steps with the collection is the catalogers are still modifying some of the content occasionally. We'd certainly consider releasing elements of the modified view if there was interest in this. However, actually, most of our current effort is going into organizing our migration to Fedora 6 at the moment. And I think that's pretty much the presentation, although I could do a demo, as I say. If there are any questions, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, James. Yeah, we can take, we've got some time, so we can take some questions if there are any. You can feel free to either drop questions in the Slack or in the chat here, or just raise your hand or unmute. We can just take them kind of informally here.
I apologize. I might have missed this. Just more of a process question. Are you manually transcribing those handwritten documents and then doing all of the? I think you did say this, but this part I totally did miss. Is manually annotating all of them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yeah, we certainly manually transcribed them all because I don't think there's really any alternative. But the markup for it, we effectively kind of produced a kind of a cut down markup to indicate some of the more common problems. So for example, where there was an abbreviation, we were also able to kind of like produce a cut down markup to indicate that, because there are lots of abbreviations for things like dates. They're a very common one, but there are some abbreviations that are just used in the letters generally. So that was one thing that we were able to use. We were kind of able to automate, but in the end, what we found was that although we were able to generate most of the TEI in a satisfactory manner, in every case, the archivist insisted on further editing the TEI, the finished TEI, so that although it was theoretically possible to create the finished pages, in fact they were all manually edited in the end. Is
that seems like a lot of work?
Yeah, I mean, really, the editing wasn't necessarily a lot of editing, but yeah, I mean, I think it was quite a lot of work.
So the only thing I'll add to that is we're currently experimenting with Microsoft Azure Cognitive AI, and it does a pretty good job at transcriptions of handwritten documents. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, we certainly would have considered that, I think, if we'd known about it at the time. But I think, in any case, I'm sure that somebody would have ended up going through all the letters, checking them, because, to be honest, some of the letters are so difficult to read. In fact, quite a lot of them, that it's, some of the words are actually pretty much guesstimates anyway, and that includes some of the signatures, which were really, just pretty much impossible to make out, to be honest. But
I would still agree with everything you just said. Yes, you need to review everything that is done. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's a good question.
Any other questions?
Yes, James, thank you. This is Randall Floyd from Indiana University. I certainly understand and appreciate that you wouldn't have resources to push on up to, bona fide open source release, but how successful would somebody be just kind of taking it as is with as a disclaimer and trying to fit it into their own institution? I was very specifically interested in the ability to do the many documents scenario and then the accessibility improvements.
Okay. So to take the first part of that, how easy would it, I think what I understood was the first part of that was how easy would it be to take what's out there already and use it to create a document?
Or rather, to take what you've done, to take kind of with the as-is disclaimer, you don't have the resources to make it what you've done with it fully open source, but if you just couldn't give it out to somebody, how successful would it be to try to take your institutional uniqueness out of it and retrofit it?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you took the institutional uniqueness out of it, I think it should work pretty well. I mean, the transform, certainly the transform to TEI is completely generic. So, there'll be no obstacle to using that. It really just takes, it just so happens that those are the fields we wanted to use. I think if we wanted to use other elements in TEI, and of course there's almost an infinity of elements in TEI, then we'd probably have, you'd need to modify the form. But beyond that, that's pretty much ready to use. And you wouldn't need to modify the EVT Viewer at all from how it looks, unless you wanted to change the elements that are there. I think that's what I'd say. And even some of those are toggleable buttons, because they did a really good job at the University of Padua in kind of making a lot of that configurable and also in documenting it. So you could take the documentation and run with quite a lot of it.
Thank you. Yeah, so could I contact you if we were interested in, I don't know if what you've done is out there somewhere, GitHub or repository or anything.
It isn't, because we weren't, first of all, we weren't going to kind of put resource into doing that unless there was some interest.
Yeah. I think it's that accessibility work that you did to properly map navigation would be probably of biggest interest. Because that's work that we would have to turn right around and do if we were trying to use the EVT Viewer.
Yeah, I mean, so the accessibility work is all done. I can't see any reason why that couldn't be prepared. Just pretty much as it is, really. So yeah, please do contact me at the email address, and we could talk further about it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? We still have a few more minutes, and we're just waiting on our next presenter. So I don't want to put you on the spot, James, but you said live demo, and
okay, let's see if I can go back.
You planted the seed.
Okay, so I don't know if you can. Yeah, you should be able to see a view. So quite a lot of what was prepared was context around the viewer. So this is a view of it's the Duke of Wellington, actually. There's some brief stuff about him, and then there's another view with details of this has views of the metadata of the letter. It's inserted into the TEI header, and then to view the letter we launched, that screen there. Most of the kind of things are kind of what you'd expect. So you can kind of switch that to a different view, and there's a kind of like a pop-up out help there with some help. There's more available, and that's a full screen viewer there. It's a magnifier there, which takes a long time to activate, but should come around. There's an image text button there, which I love, but it is the one feature we didn't really use. So that basically enables you to line up that, say, the second line, and then it highlights the second line over here as well, which is a really lovely feature when you're looking at manuscripts. But as I say, the archive staff didn't have the time to actually draw little boxes around all of the content in the letters, sadly. So yeah, there's a pop-out manuscript description, which is reasonably accessible there. Yeah, you can flip through the pages on this drop-down menu. You can toggle here, which is this is probably the most important well, apart from the page turner here, so you can move from an interpretive view to the diplomatic view there, and you can see that here you've just got really what appears on the page there. You can make the text bigger or smaller on this button. There's a view where you can wrap the text or not there. There's some lists here which aren't very useful. You can make the text bigger or smaller. And then there's a thumbnail view, which again isn't very useful for us because usually it's only a few pages. In a manuscript, it would be hugely useful because you could use it to navigate through the content. And then this element toggles in and out as well. This one here, and you can if there were more than one pages, I would scroll through them, but as there aren't, I won't. And in summary, I think that's, apart from a link back to the collection, that's pretty much it. There are some buttons here which aren't all that useful to us, but I guess if you had a slightly different view, then I can see that might be more useful. Again, the main thing we did was not to actually create any of this functionality which was already there, but actually just to make the buttons more accessible, really. Okay, I think rushing through everything on the page, I think that's probably pretty much it.
Awesome, thank you. I would just like to note that this live demo went off without a hitch, and yesterday's all work went off without a hitch. This is good news. We're having a stream of good luck today.
You just cursed the next one, I think.
No, it's going to be fine. Not a problem. Any other questions though for James? We still have another minute or two here. No, we're good. Okay, well, thank you, James, for the presentation and the demo. That was awesome.